apologize. I honestly have kind of changed what I've been talking about a few times now. I don't know, I didn't know any of you, we didn't know like how we wanted to get into this, and the idea of health is different for everybody, right? Everyone's got their own idea of what health is. Some people it's like having abs, some people it's being pain-free, some people it's being, having clear skin, like it's different for everybody. So I'll preface this by saying 7 years ago, I was a bodybuilder, 210 pounds, and I came from a background where physically fit meant health. Being strong, being athletic, being an athlete, meaning you're fit. And obviously I took that to a next level for the reason of, as we know, mental emotional things kind of being the driver of that. And that lifestyle led to me having some pretty bad gut issues. I had some pretty serious IBS to the point that I couldn't eat anything green. Like, I couldn't eat anything green except for kale and arugula. Everything else gave me diarrhea. I would be in a restaurant and have a starter salad, be in the bathroom before my main meal came. Like, it was just horrendous, and it really developed a fear for food and a fear for eating. Coupled with that, I had some pretty severe depression that drove me to a pretty dark hole, a very dark place for a period of time. And you're sick, you want help, where do you go? Guy with the white coat, go to the doctor, right? Go to the doctor, they run tests, there's nothing wrong, everything's fine, right? They couldn't do anything for my gut. Basically, they said, oh, it's just, anxiety, depression, here's the antidepressant medication, and away you go. And, at the time I was studying, I was a strength and conditioning coach. I was working with tons of people as a personal trainer, helping transform their lives. I was also a prep coach, so I was putting people on stage, literally helping people lose like hundreds of pounds, completely changing their lives. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on with myself. So I knew that I was like, okay, I have depressive tendencies, but like life wasn't horrid for me, or my perspective of life wasn't horrid. So I was like, am I really depressed? And has anyone here ever heard of the gut-brain axis? Yeah, right? So the gut and the brain are connected via something called the vagus nerve, right? This nerve that goes right from our gut to our brain. Now, we are told that this is our first brain, okay? Before we had this thing in our evolutionary chain. And there's way more neurons in your gut than in your brain. And some of you could probably relate to the fact that, you go into a situation and you feel this like tingling in your stomach. You feel this like sensation down in your gut, this like knowing. And you may not be able to intellectually put something to it, but you feel it, right? Has anyone experienced that before? Yeah. And like, you don't even know what it is. It's like our sixth sense. And those are all the neurons in your gut, just like feeling the environment, feeling the energy of the space, picking up on little cues that you intellectually or consciously can't pick up. So right from the get-go, we can start to reframe that, this in a way is the first mind, and this is the first brain, and this is the second brain, if we look at that trajectory of things. And so I was like, all right, well, I know about this gut-brain relationship. Obviously, I'm having issues with my headspace, and I'm having issues with my gut. So let's start unraveling this, right? So I do what everybody else does, green juices and this diet and that diet, and like, I've done all of it, okay? And some of them would work, some of them wouldn't, and I couldn't find anyone to really tell me what the answer was. They're like, oh, you got a bunch of food intolerances, so have some glutamine, have some digestive enzymes, have some probiotics. Has everyone here kind of familiar with those things? Mm-hmm. I really want to make sure that we don't, if I'm losing you on something, just let me know so I can explain it, all right? So pretty modern day like gut health, right? Bone broth is in that conversation, everything like that. So from there, I started doing some more research, and the idea of leaky gut came up. Has anyone heard of leaky gut? Right, pretty familiar term. Pretty much every health condition known to man stems from leaky gut. And leaky gut essentially means that, the villi in our gut are supposed to be sealed. The fences where like you can't see through, everything is solid. And then you have the fences that are staggered and you can kind of like peek through a little bit. So that's the idea of leaky gut, where we have things going from what is in our gut, this tube that runs from our mouth to our anus into our body, right? And you got to think of it kind of like a donut, because you have this tube that starts in your mouth and ends at your anus, but it's not inside your body. It's just food passing through a tube, right? The only way it gets inside your body is if it gets absorbed through the small intestine. Or if you have a leaky gut, things start passing through. Well, as things start to pass through, then your immune system starts to fire up, because 75% of your immune system is actually made in your gut. 75% of your immune system is your body's defense system around bacteria on our food, chemicals on our food, heavy metals on our food, all this crap in our food, they are the guardians, right? Our immune system. And then we also have our microbiology. Are we all familiar with the fact that we have microbes in our gut? Yeah, like trillions of them, okay? We are more bug than we are human, right? Has everyone heard of the mitochondria? Are we familiar with that term? So every single cell in your body, powerhouse of the cell, right? That is the power generator, and it's actually bacterial. Some like 75,000 years ago, the mitochondria, this like bacteria joined the eukaryote cell, which is the human cell, came together, and all of a sudden we have a human cell. And now humans can operate both with oxygen and without oxygen. Meanwhile, before they were stuck in their two realms. So we are more microbe than we are human. And so when we come to understand that health is about our microbiology, then we start to take our power back in terms of how we live our life. So here I am, got leaky gut, going through all the things, trying to figure out what's going on. So, okay, I got leaky gut, cool. What causes leaky gut, right? It's one thing to be like, here are all the things that fix it, but then what do I need to do to actually stop the torture on my leaky gut, right? What's creating this chaos in the system? Well, fungi is one of them. Fungi being mold, fungi being yeast, right? Ladies in the room, I'm sure you're familiar with that concept. Men, maybe not so much. The idea would be if you eat bread, have beer, eat a bunch of grain-like things, and all of a sudden you get bloated. That's the idea of fermentation. That is yeast, that is mold, that is fungi bloating you out, okay? Sugar and yeast together, bread rises. Everyone familiar with that concept? So that idea kind of started sticking with me. So at the time, anytime I ate carbs, I would have the worst brain fog, like the worst. I was having fruit for breakfast and I had brain fog to the point that I used to fast till 5 p.m. because if I ate anything, I would have to take a nap. Like I just could not function. So, I was kind of doing intermittent fasting just to stay out of discomfort and function during my day. This was before fasting was like a thing. Around this time, keto was kind of coming up at that time. And so I started to kind of put the pieces together and I was like, okay, if I just have protein and fats, and if I don't eat, I felt okay. And I was like, well, what I'm eating isn't necessarily bad. So what is what I'm eating doing in my system that's creating me to feel this way? Everyone following me so far? So if we have things like yeast, we have things like parasites, we have things like bacteria in the gut, they're fed primarily by sugar, right? Not necessarily chocolate bars, not necessarily candy bars. Carbs are sugar, right? High glycemic fruit are sugar. Sugar isn't bad. Sugar combined with microbes is bad, right? Now, when we eat, we poop, right? So what happens if you're feeding these microbes and they poop in your system and you're not detoxing properly? Well, now you have this toxic load in the system. So it's like you have your house, flush the toilet, but the drain out of the house is clogged up. So eventually there will be a backup that you will start to smell in the house. Well, that smell in the house is how you feel, right? That could be your gut, that could be your brain, that could be your skin, it could be extra fat you got in your body, whatever it is, because the body stores toxins in fat. It's a protection mechanism. So we have to look at the body always as every symptom is a healing mechanism, okay? Does everyone agree that the body's trying to save us at all times? Does anybody think that the body's trying to kill you? No. So if we look at every single thing we experience as our body trying to save us, the question is save us from what? Right? What's it trying to save us from? What are we doing that's not in alignment with our body that's creating this? Does that make sense? Right? So around that time, I knew fasting was good. I knew protein and fat was good. I knew carbs were kind of the enemy at the time. And I come from a strength and conditioning background. You put anyone on a low-carb diet, they lose weight and feel good, right? Pretty simple. It's like the quick, get fit, lean, beach lean avenue. And it was working. But every time I went back to eating fruit, avocado was a big one. I was intolerant to avocado for 2 years. That's kind of what I would test it with. I would eat avocado and I'd have diarrhea. So I'm like, not there yet. That was my test. And what I found is that eventually, after 2 years of doing the things to heal my gut, which I'm going to get into, non-organic avocados would give me diarrhea. Organic avocados wouldn't. And that's when I really started to pick up, okay, there's a huge difference. I knew at the time, but knowing that, organic food versus GMO food, everyone's familiar with the two-tier system we have in North America, right? In Europe, there is no two-tier system. There's just there's no GMO, there's no pesticides. Unfortunately, in Canada, we have We have to pick. We have to pay more for the real stuff, right? And we pay less for the chemical stuff. So, I knew that, but then experiencing it is a whole another thing. And some of you in this room have experienced what it feels like to be in pain, to have an injury, to be stuck, And some of you may have not had that in a health sense, but may have had it in, another aspect. And the model that I want to go through with you today is a model where you can apply feeling stuck into any avenue of your life, whether it's spiritual, whether it's mental, whether it's business, whether it's relationship, because it all comes from within, and everything within is shown outwards through what we call an aperture or a window. And there's these multiple layers of windows. And depending on what layer we're working at, some of us are very familiar with what we call the physical body. Some of us work in the mental body, working with the mind. Some of us work with our energetic body, and then some of us work primarily in the plant medicine space up here. So around that time, I started my bachelor's and master's at a school called Quantum University, because I knew that there was something greater than what I had learned in school. I went to school for a kin program, dropped out at the end of my third year because I was like, I'm graduating with like 200 people ahead of me, 200 people behind me. All we're gonna do is either become a trainer or go to chiro school or physio school. I was like, that just doesn't do it for me. I was already a trainer, I was already making money, and I was like, how do I create more impact? And the way that you create more impact on people is by solving problems and making them feel better, right? You know that, so? And so at the end of the day, I was like, okay, how do I do this on a grander scale? And so it was two-sided. It was like, I obviously want to have impact on people, but I wanted to be able to solve my own health issues. I wanted to create abundance in my life in relation to my health because I felt stuck there. And at Quantum University, one of the first things we learned is something called the DC model, and it is the Downward Causation Model, okay? And it was actually a model written by a quantum physicist, funny enough, and it is a model that describes health. So for those of you who don't know, we have the conventional science system, the reductionistic, allopathic, Western system that most of us are familiar with, right? Basically that the atom, right, is the smallest thing that there is. And I feel like the majority of you in the room know that there's something called subatomic particles. Is that a familiar term to most of you? Yeah, awesome. So beyond that, we have the subatomic world. We have the energetic world. And so we have this conventional allopathic Western system, and then we have the quantum physics system. And Einstein, when he was doing, all his laws, basically said that he knows that there's things out here, but they don't follow rules, so we're just going to ignore it and stay in this system. And that's the system that our medical system has adopted, right? That's the system that tells you whether you're healthy or not. And if you're not healthy, you're dying and you need this surgery or this pill, or you're gonna die, right? And they don't have a solution for you other than take this pill or do this surgery, right? Has anyone ever had that happen to them or have a family member that's happened to them? You guys can relate, right? And all you wanna know at that point in time is like, what can I do to help myself? Will my diet help me? Can I change my diet? And they're like, nope, diet ain't gonna do anything for you. And isn't that just absurd that the food that you choose to eat has no impact on your health, right? So within this system, you quickly learn that health, the idea of health optimization, the idea of being free of health ailments is beyond the Western system, and we have to look to quantum physics to answer a lot of those questions. Now, as soon as you go into the realm of quantum physics and bring in the concept of energy, well, now we're not just talking about health, we're talking about all sorts of things. Pretty much everyone in this room can correlate their daily life to energy, right? Well, energy is a frequency. Can we all agree to that? Right. So I practice something called bioenergetic medicine. Biology and energy combined together, right? Everyone's familiar with naturopathy? What does a naturopath use? A naturopath primarily uses things of the earth, right? Ground substances, oregano, burdock, olive leaf, like things of the earth in some sort of pill that you take as a natural form of a supplement instead of being on a pharmaceutical to manage whatever it is you're feeling. A homeopath would use homeopathy to do the exact same thing. A TCM doctor, traditional Chinese medicine doctor, would use tinctures or herbs to do the same thing. So here we have 3 types of doctors all focused on accomplishing the same thing within a person, but there are three different types of medicine. And so, how do you know which one to go to? Do you go based off referral? Do you go based off of like who your family's gone to? Like, who do you know to go to, and how do you trust that person? So I went to all of them. I experienced all of them. And what you come to learn is that each of these doctors are doing what they know how to do, but they all operate on different levels, okay? If anyone's familiar with homeopathy, liquids anyways, all homeopathic dilutions are just alcohol and water, right? So if you were that of a chemistry background, you're just selling me water. You're taking my money and selling me water, right? Someone who's in tune with the energetic field can literally feel the vibrational frequency of what was imprinted into that tincture, even though under a chemical lab analysis, there's nothing in it, right? So your level of consciousness in terms of energy, your level of consciousness in terms of like medicine given to you needs to be beyond, this is the chemical constitution of it. Because as we know, it's all about frequency and intention. That's where the real medicine comes. So while discovering this model, I hooked up with a company called Physica Energetics. Physica Energetics is the company, as some of you saw my test tray, that implores naturopathic medicine, herbal intrinsics, and homeopathy. Because when a client comes to me, we need to work at the level that that person is at, okay? So going back to the concept that every symptom is a healing mechanism of the body. So if your symptom is your body trying to heal something, generally that means there's a block, right? There's a block somewhere in the system, and that's why something is showing up, because if there wasn't a block, we wouldn't feel it. So my job is to remove the obstacles to cure. Your body's own vitality, its own vital force, knows how to heal the system. Shit, it grew you from one cell. Did anything tell it how to do that? No, it has this innate consciousness on how to do that. It has the innate consciousness on how to heal your system. The question is, how do you treat your body on a daily basis to allow that vitality to flow? And my job as a practitioner is to enlighten and guide you on that journey to remove the obstacles to cure so that you can be this highest resonance form of yourself. That is bioenergetic medicine. Bioenergetic is just about resonance, vibration, and frequency. And we get too tied up with like eating this and taking this and doing this, when at the end of the day, we just need to figure out what the blocks are. And the blocks can be each one of these levels, okay? So, Downward Causation Model. Most of us are familiar with the physical body, right? Most of us are. This is kind of where our worlds dabble. This is where 99.9% of the entire world population focuses, okay? Most people, if we think about health, what are we going to? Homeopath, traditional Chinese medicine doctor, naturopath, personal trainer, physio, chiro, right? Osteo. It's kind of like the grand scheme of them, right? That's where we go to if we have a health issue. Not many people think about, I have a health issue and I need to go see an energy worker, or I need to go see a counselor, right? That's not usually the first thought that people have. So within the physical body, it can kind of be broken up into two layers. We have biomechanics and we have the systemic body. Most of us are familiar with the biomechanical side of it. The biomechanical side of it is literally how does, we were talking about Gota, right? Gota is this concept of how your body interacts with the earth, how our movement patterns work and operate. Now, before I got into the systemic health side of things, saying I was a strength and conditioning coach, I worked with tons of injuries, low back injuries, ankle injuries, knee injuries, and most individuals work with you when you have that injury on the table, right? They're on the table, they assess you, they work with you, and then go home, right? Not many of those individuals look at how you interact with the ground. Not many of those individuals ask you what your daily activity is, because most people, whatever they do the most is what creates their movement patterns, which creates their biomechanical deficiencies, which leads to injury, okay? So that's where most people operate, right? You got low back pain, let's look at the low back, okay? Looking at the low back is one thing, but if you have pain showing up in that area, is that usually the cause? Right? Is where we feel the discomfort usually the cause? No, it's usually elsewhere. That just happens to be where the system is compensating for all of it. So, we got the postural body, we got the biomechanical body. This is where I started. And I was someone who was chronically had back pain. I wouldn't call myself like, 7 days not having a bowel movement constipated, but I would have a bowel movement like maybe one every 2 days, 3 days as a kid. I also came to learn that I was super, super dehydrated. I hated the taste of water when I was younger. I would drink juice and milk all the time. And it wasn't until my 20s I started drinking filter water and discovered I just really hated the chlorine that was in the tap water. And that's why I resisted it so much. Now, many people have chronic pain because they're dehydrated. Many people drink water but don't absorb water. Okay? Does anyone in this room experience that? They feel like they drink a ton of water but they may still feel dehydrated? Right? We're going to get into that term a little bit. Okay? So, water is really the bridge between these two. So we have the systemic system. The systemic system is like our organ systems, right? We kind of ignore organ systems unless something becomes an issue. Many people don't think, oh, my adrenals are struggling right now, right? People only really feel their gut unless they're like bloated out 6 months or they feel like they're like rotting from the inside. Otherwise, we just kind of ignore them. We just go about our day. It's not even something on our mind. But there they are working in the background all day. Now, can anyone tell me of a system that assesses your organ systems outside of my machine? Right? So that's what I came to learn. I was like, okay, well, we got the systemic body. And the reason I wrote it like this is because for all the females in the room, anytime that you have menstruation, typically you'll have some sort of low back pain or hip pain or leg pain. Relate? Familiar? So is there anything wrong with your legs? Is there anything wrong with your back? No, you just know, oh, I'm on my period and like that's what it is, right? Men may not experience that as much, but women, definitely. So you know already that your physical pain is caused by an organ. But it's a traumatic event for your uterus one time a month. Now, what happens if there's something low-grade chronic happening all the time? What happens if you're not having regular bowel movements and your large intestine starts reflexing into your low back, coupled with the fact you sit in front of a desk all day and you don't walk properly? Okay? So, the systemic system is above the biomechanical system. I take out an organ, you die. I cut off your leg, you survive, right? There is a hierarchy to the system. So I started learning, okay, well, organs are more important than biceps. Shit. Yeah? God damn. I was doing a course by Perry Nicholson, if any of you guys know who he is. His Instagram, Stop Chasing Pain. And exactly that, stop chasing pain. A lot of us chase where we have pain, and we focus in on that area. Where you have pain is not the problem, it's just where it's showing up. So we need to look globally. We need to look holistically at the system. Well, what covers our entire body? What organ covers our entire body? Skin. Good. What covers our entire body on the inside? Fascia. Good. Okay. Fascia is interconnected with something called the extracellular matrix, right? So if we're familiar with a cell, right? You know all that liquid on the inside that we call the cytoplasm? That is a differentiation of the extracellular matrix. That is our fascial system. That is our lymphatic system, okay? So the lymphatic system, everybody knows lymph nodes, right? Lymph nodes, armpits, groin, you got them everywhere, okay? If any of you have ever had a clogged lymph node and you push on it, it's not comfortable. Now, the way I explain the lymphatic system to people is we have the gutters of our roof, right? And it collects the rainwater. The eaves drop collects all the rainwater. Now, it goes from the eaves drop to the gutter to the ground, right? And what happens if that gutter is clogged or frozen? All of a sudden, the eaves drop starts to overflow, right? So, most practitioners talk about this idea of detox. I got to detox my colon, I got to detox my liver, I got to do this detox and that detox. Well, what happens if you're doing a detox, right? You're doing a detox, you're pooping in the toilet, but it's not getting out of the house. It's not getting out of the body. What are you doing? You're just moving shit around the body. Quite literally, right? That is where our body removes all this toxic waste, and it goes through the liver, through the gallbladder, and out of the body, right? What are our 4 detox organs? Liver, gallbladder, kidney, large intestine, right? A lot of people who have back pain, guess what's going on? Their kidneys are on fire. Why? Because your adrenals sit on your kidneys, okay? I would say 90% of the people in my office with back pain don't have actual back pain. It's just their kidneys are on fire, right? Because we live a lifestyle that's so hard on our adrenals. And it shows up in our kidneys. It shows up in the fact that we can't hold water. Our body's just dumping water. A lot of those people are adrenally fatigued. They crave salt. They want salt. Why? Because our adrenals start dumping salt when we're super stressed out. That's the fight or flight mechanism, right? So then what happens? Well, we try to drink more water, Well, we're drinking water, but we're still thirsty. So we're not absorbing that water. Well, water follows salt, right? Ever remember osmosis? Cell gradients, high to low, right? So if you don't have enough salts in the system, you don't have minerals in the system, in the cell, it's not going to pull that water in. And then you're just going to pee it out. So mineralization is a key thing. And why do so many of us have issues with that? It's because our soil is so depleted. We don't have minerals in the soil anymore. That's why everyone needs magnesium. That's why everyone has mineral issues, and we need to take supplements to replace that, because our soil is just so degraded from over-farming and pesticides. Right? The more pesticides they put in the soil, the more they kill the bugs. The bugs are what create the minerals in the soil. Okay? So, let's go back to the concept of lymph. Lymph is our body's way of collecting garbage and getting it out of the system. Well, what happens if our colon doesn't work? What happens if our liver is clogged up? What happens if our gallbladder is clogged up? Well, now the lymph starts to back up. So for most people, that may show up as a skin issue. For some people, it looks like water retention and they're just swollen. For me, brain fog and depression, right? Your mental space is just another symptom of the eavesdrop overflowing. Whatever you feel in the body is generally related to lymph. So at this time, Perry Nicholson, I took his course, and at the time I was out learning about foot health. Not quite Goda, but like our feet. And a lot of us wear, narrow toe box shoes. I grew up as an athlete, so I was running track spikes and football cleats and all those kind of things. And your foot doesn't move. It's just the shoe interacting with the ground. And a lot of people wear shoes like that, where it's not your foot moving with the ground, it's the shoe moving your foot, okay? Now, if I were to put your hand in a cast for a week, how would your hand feel after that? Pretty shitty, right? You'd be like, oh, fuck, I just want to move it. Now, what happens when you do that to your foot for 2 decades? Now, all of a sudden, you have a nub of a foot, and you want to know why. You got ankle, knee, or back pain. Because the thing that integrates with the ground doesn't work anymore. It's been put in a cast. And most of our shoes do that because, mind if I use yours? So, does your foot move like this? Does this move? No. How does that move? How should our toes move, right? So if your shoe doesn't move, your foot doesn't move. So at the time, of learning about lymph, I was also working with clients who would have these issues. And all I would do was do a little lymphatic release. Okay, a lymphatic release, all we're gonna do, rub the skin, do some tapping, very light stuff. Most people go for treatment, you're like, go hard, right? No pain, no gain. If you don't go hard, like it wasn't a good massage. Come on, everyone's done that, right? And so I would just do this little lymph release on the foot. And all of a sudden they get up to walk, they're like, whoa, that feels different. So everywhere you have a lymph node, there is a nerve, an artery, a vein, and a muscle, okay? And when the lymph node is swollen and clogged up, it tells the whole area to shut down. So a test I would do is have everybody stand up on one foot. Actually, let's just do that. Everyone stand up on one foot.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're just gonna stand here for, call it 15 seconds, pick a foot, any foot. We're gonna do both sides. Get your leg up nice and high, make it kind of hard. Just see how you hold it. Maybe your foot starts to cramp. Wow, you guys are all pretty good. And switch. Everyone's pretty good. So, if you guys have ever heard of the Foot Collective, basically everyone would stand on a beam, okay? So when you stand on a beam, obviously it makes this exercise much more difficult. And it's all about stability. There, we're gonna sit down. So, obviously when you're working with someone who has health issues, or you're working with someone elderly, their biggest issue is they are scared to fall, right? If anyone's got older family, they're like, I just don't want to fall. They got their cane, they got their walker. Well, what is walking? Walking is a one-legged exercise. Clearly, we're all pretty healthy because we could stand there on one leg, no problem. But a lot of people don't have this ability. So all we would do is do a very simple lymphatic release right in that arch of the foot, and all of a sudden, they would redo the same exercise, and they're standing tall again. I didn't teach them how to do it differently. We didn't train it. I just released the lymph node in your foot. So what does that mean? It means the body has this innate intelligence of what it's doing. So why are we trying to tell it to do something when we could just get out of its own way? So that's when I really learned, biomechanics are affected by lymph. Well, that's interesting. And lymph is composed of what? Water. That's why I brought that up. So if we're not drinking enough water, or if we're not absorbing our water, then can our lymph really get stuff out of the body? Can, right? Now, for my clients that saw major improvements in this little lymph release, then I would question, okay, well, this is a lymphatic problem. Well, the lymphatics isn't necessarily the problem because we know the lymphatic system is just a drain system and it has to go through the liver and gallbladder. So then I started focusing, okay, well, we got to focus on the liver gallbladder. Well, in today's world, pretty much every single human being has a liver gallbladder issue. Straight. Okay? I don't care how healthy you are, how little you drink, it's not about alcohol. So whether the body is in fight or flight or rest and digest, everyone's familiar with those two terms? Nervous system terms, okay? Most of us are in a fight or flight state, a chaos state, a go, go, go state. Yeah, right? And it's a pattern. We get stuck in this pattern where moving from fight or flight to rest and digest can be scary. But when we're in that state, there's 50% less blood flow through the liver. 50%. So just your nervous system state affects how well you detox, and how well you digest, and how well your sex hormones work. Procreation, right? So we start to understand that a lot of what's going on with our health and our body's ability to detox has to do with the nervous system. So I wasn't quite at the nervous system level yet at that time. I was hyper-focused on, okay, well, the liver and gallbladder are clogged up, let's clear it out. Well, how do we do that? And at the time, she's laughing. At the time, I was talking to my grandparents, and they grew up in Guyana, third world country. And if anyone's, foreign from the Caribbean, parasites are a thing. Kids have parasites. It is common. It's what happens when you have water like that. Here in Mexico, so if I have a client who does parasite testing in Canada and it comes up negative and they come down to Mexico and do a test, very different. Same stool sample, very different, because in Canada they test for like 10 parasites. Down here they test for 300. Because they think because we have chlorinated water in Canada or the States that you can't get a parasite. So they test only for parasites that can kill you. Well, the person isn't dying. The person is just in a subclinical state, right? They're not in a medical state. So you come to understand that certain testing with the medical system is relative to one, where you're getting tested and what the environment or society understands. And in Canada and the States, they don't look at environment as really a factor. Can everyone relate to that concept, right? It's either you have this or you don't, genetic or not, right? So coming back to the idea of water, our entire system is made of water. If we're not drinking enough water, we're not absorbing enough water, we're not going to drain toxins out of the body. All these toxins go through the liver and gallbladder. And my grandparents said that, they used to make the kids drink Epsom salts before they go back to school every year. Every August, the kids would drink Epsom salts. Now, if anyone has never drinking Epsom salts, it's a diuretic. In Trinidad, they have something called senna tea. It's another diuretic. And these cultures would use it as a way to flush their kids out before they go back to school so they're not swapping parasites. Or bringing them home. That's what they would do. It was very normal. I'm sure some of you hearing that today are like, what the heck?
Is that bad? I mean, you're not supposed to drink Epsom salts, right?
Well, you would say it's not bad, but it was used for a very long time to clear the bowels. The question is how much and how often. A few tablespoons of Epsom salts is just a diuretic. This leads to me figuring out something called the liver gallbladder flush. Liver gallbladder. So I started looking into like liver flushes and liver gallbladder flushes, and I came across a book called The Amazing Liver Gallbladder Flush by Andreas Ortiz. And my God, that flush has saved a lot of humans, man. Let me tell you, I've worked with over 1,500 people, and that thing just works magic. And You know, you talk to a medical doctor, they'll tell you to kill you, it's dangerous, da 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 da. They've never tried it, haven't even really looked into it, but then everyone on the other side of it who's done it tells me that they feel so different and they can't believe what just came out of their liver and their gallbladder. You know?
It's kind of gross coming in, it looks gross coming out.
So Anthony's done it, Aaron's done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting flush, and really, honestly, it's 4 tablespoons of food grade Epsom salts that you drink, and it acts as a diuretic. So I've had clients who've done colonoscopies, and I don't think anyone was old enough to do a colonoscopy, but they give you this like 1 liter chemical vat to drink to clear out your colon. It's fucking disgusting. And it flushes you out, but it's a chemical mess. And those same clients who drink the Epsom salts are like, I just rather do that because it does the exact same thing. It's just a diuretic that clears you out. So 4 tablespoons of that, and then you have 1 drink that you have at 10 p.m. And it's 4 ounces of olive oil, 4 ounces of grapefruit juice. And essentially what's happening during this flush is you're not eating protein and fat. So your liver and gallbladder start to swell up with bile. Bile is created by the liver, stored in the gallbladder to digest your protein and fat. So it starts to swell up over 3 or 4 days of not eating it, not eating protein and fat. Then when you drink that olive oil drink that I just mentioned, all of the bile in the liver and gallbladder squeeze down, kind of like you're rinsing a cloth, and push all this stuff out. And the stuff that ends up in the toilet, people start to question, like, where was that in my body? You know?
It's fucking crazy.
Is that for back? Wait, you don't eat for a couple days?
No, you eat, just not protein and fat.
No.
So you can have any vegetables, any fruit, any carbs, anything like that. And so, you know, you got a filter in your car, you got a filter in your house, you got your furnace filter, what do? Buy a new one, pop it out, pop a new one in. How do you clean the filter system of the body? How do you do that? Right? What's the mechanism that we do that? Will a doctor ever tell you that you have to cleanse an organ? Take this pill. That's going to fix it. There's no idea of regeneration in the medical system. There's no idea of healing a system and helping a system recover. That is not a concept that they cover. That's not a concept they understand. Their only concept is you are going to keep doing the same shit that you've been doing to end up where you are, and here's a pill to allow you to keep doing that. So if you think about it like a car, you got a heavy foot, you keep wearing down your brake pads, and every 3 months you're going in to change your brake pads, and you just don't understand, like, why do I have to keep doing this? And they don't know why. They got nothing to tell you. Their job is to allow you to keep living your life. I'm the person that's going to come in and take the lead shoe off your foot and be like, yo, we need to maybe take the V8 away from you. Because, like, clearly it's too much for you to handle. So how does that turn into human sense? Well, we need to assess what we're doing in our lifestyle that's leading to these issues. You are on this road, and this road has you here. But you don't want to be here. You want to be here. Well, we have to change how the road that we took. And the road that we took are our actions on a daily basis, our lifestyle habits, our thinking habits. Okay? So I started doing liver gallbladder flushes and whatnot. All of a sudden I started to feel better. I could think again, then have brain fog, I started eating. I was like, oh my God. Now, when most people talk about gut health, most people don't talk about the liver and the gallbladder, right? Has anyone ever really heard anybody talk about the liver gallbladder? Not really, right? They talk about the gut, and that's about it. Well, for those of you who don't know, digestion starts in the mouth, right? First organ, esophagus, stomach. It's where hydrochloric acid comes in. That's one of our main acids that help break down meat. Okay, break down our food, break down our vegetables. So for those of you who are super burpy or super farty, you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. Or you're fermenting, gas is being created and it's going either up or down. After the stomach, you got the small intestine. The small intestine is that big swirly thing in the middle and helps you absorb the nutrients that you're eating. But that's dependent on the stomach breaking everything down. From there, we go to the large intestine. Large intestine, up, across, and down. We should be pooping every day. If you don't poop every day, that's a problem. If you poop multiple times a day, more than 2 or 3, things are moving too fast. You might not be absorbing nutrients properly. If your poop is anything other than 6 inches light brown, you don't have a good bowel movement. You see food in your stools, stop eating that food. You're not digesting it. Or it's a food intolerance. Okay? Your liver and gallbladder The liver does a million things, but in terms of digestion, as I said, it creates the bile. The bile is how you digest fat. Now, when you hold your skin, is it hard like this? Is it rough like, a concrete wall? What does it feel like? Describe the texture of your skin.
A baby's bottom.
A baby's bottom. What does a baby's bottom feel like?
Soft.
Soft and smooth, right? Now, do you think that's because of proteins, carbs, or fats?
Fats.
Fats. Okay, good. Does everybody want smooth skin? Yeah. So, if we go back to the fact that bile helps you digest fat, and we don't have baby soft, smooth skin, then what does that tell us? There's something going on with our liver. What's our brain made of?
Fat.
Fat. What's our eyes made of?
Fat.
Fat. Anything that's squishy. Are your eyes squishy? It's fat. It's fat. There's fat in there. Okay? Every single cell. So I don't know how many of you remember cell biology, but the cell has a hydrophobic and hydrophilic layer. A layer that likes water, a layer that does not like water. And it is made of fat. Every single hormone in the body is made of fat. So you got, for the females out there, you got hormonal issues, you have a liver problem. For the men out there with low sex drive, you got a fat liver issue. It's the same thing. Male or female, we got the same organs. So instead of focusing on the hormones, look upstream. We got to look at the liver. So you can have stuff going on with the liver. You can have parasites living in the liver. You can have fungi living in the liver. Okay? Anyone here alcoholic of the past? Beer drinker? No?
Yeah.
A lot of beer, man. Okay, if you drink a lot of beer and the liver filters beer, don't you think the liver could become a little fungal over time? It's a thing. It happens. So if we look at our digestion, we go from the stomach to the small intestine to the large intestine. Now, we have our liver and our gallbladder over here, okay? And it's in like a little treehouse because it's not part of our digestion. It's just sitting up here. And it just drops bile in there like it's supposed to, okay? Now, when you take, say, antimicrobials or something like that because you're trying to clean out your gut, okay, I'll use you as an example. You're trying to clean out your gut. You take something to like kill the bad bugs in your gut. It's going through the gut, but does it go up into the liver? Does the tube of the gut go into the liver? No, this drops into the tube. So I was like, well, how do I clean up a liver that's been filtering garbage for X amount of years? We have to get it to empty in a way. And the liver gallbladder flush was a way for me to do that. Okay? Now, just doing flush after flush after flush doesn't solve the problem. It does clean the filter, but we got to assess where's the toxic load coming from that's clogging the liver. Well, we know we live in a toxic world that has shit in it all the time. Very different than ones that our parents grew up in. So much so that our water has poison in it. Okay? So our liver is working overtime. And that's just outside of what we choose to put in our body or what we choose to consume or the lotions we choose to put on our skin or in our hair or whatever else. Right? So this is where lifestyle strategies start to come into place. This is where organic food starts to come into place. This is where the idea of personal products starts to come into place. Right? There's many layers there. And so when I was working with the machine, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, I can assess what's going on with the organ systems, and I could start to put the pieces together as to what organ systems need help, and I could recommend this is how we should eat, and this is a detox we should do. But I needed to identify, well, there could be things in our environment, but there could also be things living inside of us, right? If someone's been a breadaholic for many years, or an alcoholic, or a sugarholic for many years, and it's stuck in the body, and the body isn't detoxing very well, what do you think the body's gonna do to help you out? You can't detox very well because you're super stressed out. You gotta have a drink to relax at the end of the day. You love your sweets. So you got all this crap literally in the body that it doesn't know how to deal with, so it starts to recruit some friends. It brings in yeast, it brings in mold, it brings in parasites to eat up the mess. But they gotta eat and then excrete, right? And then they excrete, but you still can't detox. And then all the symptoms start to come through, okay? So in terms of what there could be heavy metals, there could be chemical residues, there could be fungi, there could be bacteria, there can be parasites, things like geopathic stress. It's a very real thing. For those of you who have AirPods in your head all day, you're always on an iPhone, you're always traveling in the air, radiation is poison. So if you don't have, like a smart guard or something for some of your tech, it does make a difference. Ways to protect you. We call that term biohacking, right? We call that term biohacking. Biohacking is a way, a modern day way to support our biology, hack our biology. Back in the day, go in the lake, go ground, but what happens when you live in a city like Toronto, up in a condo, Vancouver, you're disconnected from the earth. We're disconnected from the battery that is the earth that naturally charges us as humans, right? Who feels better when they go to the cottage? Or camping, right? You go camping and you sleep great. Why? There's no EMF, you're grounding. And it's free. It's freaking free. But for those of you that live in a condo, I would look into something like a grounding mat. You are disconnected from the earth. So unless you have a lifestyle, which would be blessed if you can go outside every day, get out in nature. I know in Toronto it's pretty miserable, so not everyone wants to go ground in the snow, right? So having a grounding mat is an option.
Or a Faraday cage?
Or you build a Faraday cage into your house. So what the Faraday cage will do is it will block EMF, so you're under less load, which is great, but we're still disconnected from the battery.
You're also blocking the natural
Correct.
frequency of the earth as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It blocks out everything. It's going to block out everything. So understanding that there's all these different avenues to look at in terms of how to optimize our health. So that's just focusing on the physical body. Okay? This is how we show up in reality. Now, once we clean this up and you recognize, okay, I had a backed up liver because I made poor choices and I did steroids, and then I couldn't detox properly because I was super stressed out from my chaotic upbringing. You start to put the layers together as to how do I not end up back in this place again? Has anyone ever been through a situation where you've done something, learned something, and then kind of ended up in the same place but a differentiation of it? Yeah? Yeah? Right? Feedback loop, right? You may not be in the same spot. It's like the spiral effect. It's like, oh, I'm not good enough. And I'm not quite here, but I'm here. And it's a fractal of that. And you're like, well, shit, why am I seeing the same pattern? Well, this is where the downward causation model comes in. Because this is how we show up in the world. But as you can see, we have these other layers. So above the physical body, we have something called the vital body. The vital body, I got meridians and chakras. So for whoever did do a test with me, we were testing meridians in the hands and feet. Okay? For those of you who don't know what a meridian is, it relates to the traditional Chinese medicine, and a meridian is this energetic flow of chi, of prana, of energy into an organ. And if we were to cut you open, look at a cadaver lab, there is no physical structure for a meridian. So what they did was let's start with this. So most of you would recognize acupuncture, right? You're like, acupuncture is real, that's a thing. Even doctors talk about acupuncture, it's legit. Well, why is it legit? Because what they did was they injected radioactive isotopes into where the Chinese said these meridian lines were, and under a scan, they could see them moving through the body in some sort of channel or flow. So because Western medicine techniques validated that it was real, Western medicine has accepted it. We didn't accept that meditation was helpful until they started doing brain scans. We know it's helpful, but we didn't think it was legit until brain scans showed that, right? So that is where we found out that meridians are real. Now, in the world of chakras, a lot of us believe in chakras here in this room, but the medical system doesn't. Why? Because they don't have the tech to evaluate what's going on with chakras. Because do chakras lie within the realm of the atomic world? No, they're in the subatomic world. They're in the energetic world. Now, if you have something going on with your root chakra, everyone know where the root chakra is? Right at the bottom. Okay? Does anyone know the emotion of the root chakra? Fear. Fear. Okay? So if there's a subconscious pattern rooted in fear, you're gonna feel it down in the root chakra. Well, what organs are in the root chakra? Your adrenals, your large intestine, and then your back, obviously. So if I assess somebody for their back pain and they're pooping okay, and their mechanics in their SI joint are okay, and it just won't go away. You know the people that are like, it feels better? Zoe probably knows this. They feel better. It's okay, they feel better, and then it kind of comes back, and you're like, I just haven't hit the nail on the head. And then you ask them what they're scared of.
Yeah.
And then tears. Tears, right? They're scared. They're living in fear, and their adrenals are pumping so hard. Or they're so scared that they're so tense and like locking everything down that they can't even poop properly. And that inflammation starts to run into the organ systems or in the muscular system of the back. Right? So you start to go up the ladder. So what I was doing with you guys is I was testing the bioresonance. I was testing the resonance of your organ systems to see if it's in a resonant frequency. Is it in a normal frequency? Is it in a stress frequency? Or is it in a weakened frequency? Right? Now, can we all agree that we are electrical beings? If you're dying, what did they do to bring you back to life? Poof, charge you. Right? So what do we do to recharge? Ocean, grass, sun, that's how we recharge. Well, that's how we recharge. Most people don't do that. So we look at it as electrical beings. So I'm testing the frequency or the electrical resonance of your organ systems to see where they are. Now, can we agree that every single thing on this planet resonates at a different frequency? Right. So that amazing software over there has these stored frequencies that I can filter into your body to see what's going on and give me an idea as to what's happening. Now, the difference between the medical system assessing your biochemistry and me assessing your meridians, they're working in the clinical setting. So you're either healthy or you're dying. But what happens to the people who want to be optimal? What happens to the people who are in a subclinical space where, like I was, having gut issues or depression and I couldn't figure it out? I wasn't sick enough that they could help me. And they definitely couldn't tell me how to be healthy, right? You're in that subclinical space. And so I lucked out by finding someone who had that machine to do my food sensitivity testing. And I pretty much flunked it. I was intolerant to everything I was eating. Chicken, rice, spinach, lettuce, like peppers, all of it. All of it. And that's what kind of sent me down this road. So we start to learn that there's this waterfall effect. Working from the top down is how we see the most profound change. When most people are stuck here at the bottom forever. They're just going in circles, right? I think most of us are here because we've developed a level of consciousness. Well, where does that happen? Where do we develop consciousness? Where is consciousness? Can anyone point to it?
It's in Bali.
It's in Bali, yeah. Yoga teacher training. You know? It's here. It's in our space. It's in our field, right? We can feel it when we are in someone else's circle, when we look at somebody. Everyone can feel that. So we're all having wild dreams. At least I am. My God. You know? This collective consciousness is upgrading all of us by just being in this room. Where does that happen? It happens in the mental body. Is anyone familiar with conscious and subconscious? Right? What percent of our brain is conscious? 5 to 10%, depending on who you talk to. You know? Really, really small percent. So you guys making the decision to be here today, to choose the path that you've been on, has been with about 5% of your brain power. 5. Okay? I'm going to assume that a lot of us here have not followed in the footsteps of our parents, per se. We've learned a thing or two from them. Now, how many of us in this room, you know somebody that said that they don't want to end up like their mom or they don't want to end up like their dad, yet that's exactly where they ended up? Can anyone relate to that? Right? Why is that? Why would someone end up like their parents even though they said they didn't want to?
The subconscious.
The subconscious. A+. And what is the age frame where we develop our subconscious?
6 months to like 8 years, approximately.
Somewhere between 8 to 10, somewhere in that range, right? Basically, from the moment as a baby that it can interact with your environment, and albeit on an energetic level, that baby is being imprinted by mom from inception. Literally from inception. But the subconscious mind, somewhere between 6 months, 8 to 10 years. So, in the 95% of the subconscious mind is running whatever it learned from mom and dad. So although with the 5% they're screaming, I don't want to be like daddy, they end up just like dad. A girl who resents her father ends up marrying her father. Not literally, but figuratively. Marries a guy who is just like her father with the same patterns. And that's because they haven't broke through into the subconscious mind and become aware of the patterning from their parents. Okay? So if we look at this, mental, final, physical. Mental is above all of it, right? So if we got something going on down here, or something going on with our emotional body, or our meridians, it's actually coming from the mental body. It's coming from the mind, right? So if we go back to the idea of fear, our root chakra idea, showing up as a colon issue or a back pain issue, well then we got to figure out, where does that fear come from? Why are you so scared? What are you scared of? And most people will come up with whatever is happening in the now for them. I'm scared of this happening, I'm scared of that happening. But what is fear? Can anyone throw out?
Not living in the present.
Not living in the present. What else?
It's
Uncertainty, lack of trust, lack of love.
unknown.
The unknown. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Right? That's what fear is. What's the second chakra? Anybody know? Sacral. Emotions of this chakra.
The emotions?
Yeah. So we got root and we got fear. Sacral.
Is it love?
Shame and guilt. Shame and guilt. The middle-aged man who cheated on his wife, can't get it hard anymore. Shame and guilt patterns. Cialis, man. That's the pattern. It's as simple as that. Shame and guilt patterns. Solar plexus. What's this? What emotion is this?
Anger.
Self-worth. The anger is the liver. The emotion of the liver is anger. So self-worth. I had tons of gut issues because I was not worthy. Now, if we go briefly, sidestep, to the idea of being in utero, backstory, my dad, Hindu, my mom, Catholic, dad, brown, mom, white. Dad's older brother had an arranged marriage, Hindu. My dad ditched his arranged marriage to marry a white girl, being my mom. So she was the first white girl married into the family, and she was the white bitch. And for her entire pregnancy with me, she wasn't good enough. No matter what she did, she was white and not good enough for my dad's family. So that's what I was imprinted with in utero during her pregnancy. They got married 10 days before I was born out of shame and guilt. So already we have to be super conscious as to, how were we brought into this world? If you really want to understand the deeper layers of your psyche and how your mind works, how was your mom's pregnancy with you? What emotions did she experience with you? What were you imprinted with? That, we're not even talking subconscious yet. We're over here. We're in the super mental body. That is just a deep programming while you were being developed from one cell into a baby. Right? So everyone knows the concept of loving water versus hating water. Yeah, everyone knows that study. The idea of loving a plant versus hating a plant. Are babies any different? What are babies? Water. Water, it's all frequency. Okay? So when we're working with a adrenal pattern and their chaos pattern per se, and if it's driven by fear, we got to figure out what the fear is. And the fear is not necessarily anything real. The fear can just be an imprint from mom or dad. Right? Now, how do we work with these two realms? Does anyone have any ideas of how you would work with that?
Hypnotherapy.
Hypnotherapy.
Inner child awareness.
Finding a therapist. Inner child play. Right?
Psychedelics.
Psychedelics.
Yeah.
Supervised psychedelics. And not just doing psychedelics, but integrated psychedelics. Too many people that I work with are like, oh, I microdose this, and I do this, and I do this, and I talk to them, and it's like, yeah, you do psychedelics, but I can see the patterns behind that. You're like chasing something. What are we chasing? Are we all just looking for love? Do psychedelics help us find love? They make us feel love. Don't necessarily help us find it.
Well, they show it.
They can show it for sure. Showing you and integrating it into your being are also two different things. Because many people have their experiences but don't integrate it into their daily life. They don't reintegrate it into their body. Because then they go back to their world and they're still a byproduct of their world. They don't stand strong in what they've learned. They don't stand strong in who they are. They're not rooted in what they've experienced. And that's the integration. That's the key piece. That's reframing the subconscious into the conscious. Otherwise, you do psychedelics, you tap into the subconscious, and then people just go right back into the old pattern. Because for many people, it's too much. Psychedelics can unlock a lot. And then they create fear because people don't know how to integrate it into themselves, into their daily experience. And that's where the integration is key. And that's why tapping into some of this work beforehand is important. Because if you just go from the gym to trying to disperse fear, good luck. It's not going to happen. Guys like Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, if you're unfamiliar with them, I highly suggest you tune into those guys. Because they're the people that are going to start to bring some awareness, bring some enlightenment to what's happening. Now, the reason I got nervous system here in red is because although the nervous system is here in the systemic body, it's being programmed by the mind, right? If you get stressed out, okay, right before this, get a little excited, get a little anxious, palms start sweating, get a little flutter. What's sending those signals? The nervous system. As a byproduct of what? The conscious or the subconscious mind. So for those of us that are stuck in a state of trauma, fight or flight pattern, messed up gut. Some of you, I talked about a term called left spin, okay? So if any of you remember the mitochondria, let's go back to like grade 6 biology. The mitochondria, there's something called the electron transport chain, right? And that's how we create 36 ATP, okay? It's like spinning thing, pumping out electrons, an ATP. And it spins to the right. Left spin is this idea of that spin being backwards or it not working. So when I test somebody, I can look to see whether their cells are receiving nutrition, receiving water, and also detoxifying. You can also relate that to receiving emotional imprints, receiving love. It can be on any one of these layers that you want to put it to. So oftentimes the people that I work with, they're in left spin because there's no other system that can test for it because it's an energetic thing. I can also have someone where their system isn't in left spin, but they have an organ system in left spin. There's a few in here that have organ systems in left spin, just one system. And if that system is in left spin, then we look at, well, what is the emotion tied to that organ system? Left spin is a safety mechanism. It's like a shut everything down, batten the hatches, like we don't want to touch that. Because of a chemical, an emotion, a trauma, right? So the key, like we were talking about earlier, right? When we're getting a little worked up, what do? We find our breath, right? Because the breath can regulate what? The nervous system, right? So that means that there's a program running the nervous system, and the way we moderate it is with our breath. But what if we can access that program and just change it? By the Muse headband, right? Meditation, brain tap, hypnotherapy, NLP. So many different things out there that can tune in to those programs and rewrite them and set all of this free. Repattern all of this just by changing how this operates. Now, if someone has lived their life primarily in fear of being good enough, fear of having enough money, fear of what people think of them, and all of a sudden you remove fear as their operating program, how do you think they're going to feel? Pretty fucking liberated. Isn't that for sure? Do any of you feel in this room like you have a fear pattern, shame, guilt pattern, or self-worth pattern that you operate on? We all do, I'll tell you that. We all do. And a lot of us have also moved through those layers. I started at the bottom. I was like scared for my life. I was beat for 16 years of my life. I was literally scared for my life. For a good portion of my life without even knowing it. You know? I was like, oh, I grew up in a West Indian family. Like, that's how they are. That's not how you treat humans. You know, it's not how you're supposed to treat your kids. But they didn't know any better. And that's how it was. So I had to move from fear. Then I moved to the shame and guilt pattern. Where it was like guilted by my parents for like doing chores or not doing chores. You know, you can't sit down and relax. You gotta do this. Or you're not good enough. If you're not a doctor, lawyer, blah, 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 you're not gonna amount to anything. I said I dropped out of my third year of university. My parents told my family that I graduated university. Because of the shame and guilt that they had that their son didn't finish university. And then 2 years later, when I opened my first personal training gym, they told everybody. Isn't that a fragmented version of love? That is subconscious programming. And if you don't do the homework to see those patterns, then that is what runs you. So, I primarily work in this realm. This is the realm that I stay in, okay? The supermental body is the idea that, you know, we got teachers, we got mothers, we got healers. It's an archetype that like we just feel like we fall into, this role that we fall into. And it can change throughout our life. I am a teacher. I am a healer. I'm fragments of both, you know? And we all have fragments of it. And when you tune in to the archetype that you fit into, it's like this flow system that just goes super easy, you know? If you're in an archetype of like, you know, a teacher role and you hate teaching, you're gonna meet a lot of resistance, okay? How do you discover that? It's self-discovery. It's taking the time, it's slowing down, it's finding quiet to tune into those things. It's reading books, hiring coaches, you know? That's where that happens. And then of course we have the bliss body. And I put spirit because the bliss body of those people that have had a near-death experience, they come back, they're a different person, right? Where did that person go? What did they learn? Did they see their soul? Did they see God, their version of God? They saw something and it completely changed them. Is it just there was no oxygen to the brain? Who knows, right? But they come back a different person. People who have cancer and have spontaneous healing after an Aya ceremony or an LSD ceremony or a mushroom ceremony. You know, what happens? There's something that happens in the spiritual realm where things shift in the quantum realm, you know? That is the power of psychedelics when done in a safe space, in a sacred space with integration. I've had friends where we've gone into this realm and done this by people that were supposed to protect us and didn't. And led us down a path that like wasn't so great. When you dabble in the realm of psychedelics, you want to be very careful as to the energies of the people that you're doing it with, because it creates an entanglement that is very hard to break. So doing psychedelics with the next partner, it's going to be very difficult to get away from that ex-partner because you're tied to them energetically. You can try to do all the things in the physical realm, but if you don't start to remove the energetic cords in this realm, it's going to be very, very difficult. So this is the model, the Downward Causation Model that I operate in, and I practice bioenergetic medicine. And for any of you in wherever you are in your health and wellness journey, in your career, in your personal journey, the answer is somewhere on this chart. Because it's not in anything you should do or not do. It's all within this construct. And so it's really about who do you trust to help you dive in to this construct and figure out where those answers lie, to remove the obstacle to cure, whatever your cure is. Whether that's, a job, a situation, a relationship, wherever that is. Thank you for listening, guys.